I think we can start, right?
Explain.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Um, Today, I have two very special guests, very well-known architect and artist, Murat Tabanlıoğlu and David
Adjaye.
Adjaye. I am having a little bit difficulties. So we are gonna start with Murat. I think Murat going to use pointer, and he's going to talk about a little bit his work, what he has been done and with his office. We're gonna talk about and discuss about how architecture is is changing our lives around the world. And so let's start with Murat. So I think it is coming. This.
Yeah. First of all, I know David.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about how they met. You know, in I
2
think
years ago, 3
2
years
years
ago.
ago. Yeah.
2 years ago,
Ahan
Aga Khan jury.
jury. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the master
So-
jury, so we
Yeah.
met together, and then we had several meetings. We eat together. Now we are friends, and I think it was nice to meet again here.
Yeah.
And to share the panel
stage.
together. That's
Absolutely.
great, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the reason that I selected today 4 projects. So, and because David is here, I said it should be a little bit African. So we.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is the Architecture Magazine 2012 architecture record. That was the cover page when we finished the project in Equatorial New Guinea, Malabo. So they came to us and then they asked, it's very interesting project. So then they asked who was the client, because you know they are a little bit afraid when it's about Africa, about some countries.
Sure.
And then they went there also, with us, without us, and then at the end they decided to speak about and to write about these projects. But it started differently. In nearly 2010 or 2009, I can remember, Gaddafi was still in life. It was 2000.
I think it was. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
in.
before-
he was alive.
He was killed 2 years ago, maybe. You met Gaddafi, you said me. I know him. Yeah.
I met him.
They wanted from us a Congress center. And as you know, many Turkish firms are working in Tripoli and is also in other cities of Libya. It was also
Yeah.
before everything happened. And
There
that
were
was
many companies from Turkey
Yeah.
doing.
And
great business.
that was one of the first design and build projects in Tripoli. There is a park near to the city center, and they wanted to make some buildings in this park. They want to make a hotel. Then they invited also other architects. But now, after everything happened, it's only the hotel and this convention center. And they are not bombed, they are staying
And nothing
there.
happened.
Nothing happened.
You're
yeah.
lucky, actually. Yeah.
And when we went to this park, first we looked for a place because it was a lot of trees. And as architects, and nobody likes, I think, to cut the trees and make buildings, except some. I don't want to be politics. And okay, we looked for a space where we can make a building because they want from us typical Congress center. Congress centers are a box, and then we looked how we can make a building between all these trees, and we found a place really without trees, and we started to combine the space with the entrances. And then, of course, they wanted from us a special entrance for the Gaddafi or for the presidents when they are coming. Because this Congress Center, the main reason or the opening of this center was to make the conference for 60 leaders of Africa. So he wants to come here and say, I'm the leader of Africa. And after our first sketches, I was also before in Libya. I know when the sand is blowing or how the sun is here. And then we looked for a skin, a secondary skin. It's a glass box, and then we have like arcades around the skin. And the skin, we search for different materials, and we said at the end, we must have a mesh, like a tulle, and it's a bronze mesh. And then, as you can see, some parts of the building is transparent and some parts differently. It's semi-transparent, and then in the night, it can be different. Also, these centers are ugly when you have these big banners, and then we said we should have a big media mesh like this, and so where you can advertise and say when there's a congress about something, and then you can give the signage here through a little computer. So it was a part of the architecture that was important for us. And when there's also during the day, you can see through the building.
I remember you were going to do something like this in Atatürk Cultural Center
Yeah.
in Taksim.
Yeah.
You were talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did this
Yeah.
there actually.
So this is then the inside. This is the space between the main building and the outside. So it's like a shadow place, so you can walk through. There is also water to make it more fresh. And from inside, through this metallic bronze tulle, so you can feel still the park. And the sun is not coming to your face. Some people can call this building sustainable, but I make it naturally, so it's not a must. This building must be a green building, etc. If you make like this at the end, it's
green
also good.
already.
The engineers are saying.
Right.
And then there was that conference, and to this conference, the president of Equatorial New Guinea came, and then he wanted a similar building from us, and. But in Malabo, Malabo is an island. It's not in the mainland, so and they are making a new capital for Equatorial New Guinea. And this is outside of the city, and there are already villas for many people. As a hotel, it's very nice. It's on the ocean and very green, different than Libya conditions. And then also you have the view of the ocean, very nice. And then here we see, and another thing, there was already an existing building. Chinese architects and contractors made a very ugly convention center, but the president wanted another one next to it, connected with a bridge. And when we stayed there, we stayed in places like this. It's more colonial state. Then you have the church. That was a Sunday. This is the president. And then there are very nice trees. And then I think that was one of the main inspiration to start to make sketches. It was one of the first sketches. That was the second one. How we can cover the box with a different skin. And at the end, we came to this. The main problem was there is nothing, no industry if you make a building like this. Maybe if you want to make a house, you can use materials from there, but we had to import everything from our country or from the rest of our world, and then but we designed the building accordingly. So these are prefabricated panels. And then if they are coming together, and then we have to import with ships and then airplane in containers. And then they wanted everything very quickly because then the next convention or the conference of the leaders was then here.
How many days or months?
I
I
don't
remember it
remember.
was too quick.
Yeah, 5
Too
months
quick,
or 6
right?
months.
Yeah.
So they work day and night. So this is the connection to the main building. So this is already finished. Some parts of the facades are very tight, so the screen, but still that's in the night. And then this is the bridge again. You can see here it's a very three-dimensional. It's everything laser cutted. But when you are in the lobby, coming from the bridge, still you can see the ocean. So that was the aim. It's from the inside. Oh, I'm going, I think, back. Sorry.
Okay.
So then there was another conference here, and at this time, again with now 60 leaders again. You have 60 leaders in Africa? They said like
54.
54, sorry.
Yeah.
Planning a little bit lower.
Okay. And after the conference, Senegal president came here, and then they wanted for Dakar another one. So
You are
that
getting
was
famous in
Huh?
Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh?
Murat is.
It's like the McDonald's, huh? and they so this is when you are coming in. This is it's showing where it's 3 degrees. It's the Malibu, the entrance. We made also the interior. This is the main hall. That was again in design and build. So many workers, architects, consultants working all together. This is a different type of job. Normally we design 1 or 2 years, and then they have to make this in another 2 years. And then this is Dakar, the third one. I will go down very quickly. It's again different than Malabo. Colors, different materials. These are the villages. And again, the trees are the main impressions. We look to the geometry, and this is the one we finished, I think, last year. This is a big wooden roof. Here, as you can see in the other ones, it was more the boxes and the skin, and here we have a big roof. Sometimes we have shadow places, sometimes semi-covered spaces, and then different, from outside you can read different functions. So this is one of the entrances. There are 3 entrances. You can enter the building from 3 parts. And if there is no convention, also you can use the building as a meeting point. People are coming to eat something, or there is a museum, or is a library. So it's different than the others. So as you can see, every part of the building is looking different from different angles. So this is the restaurant. So then we went there again, and that was, it's not a fashion show. So when there is a congress, people are coming like this. So in very nice dresses. This is a part of the museum. Maybe I show you a short film, and
let's
then
see the video,
and then
we will
yeah.
continue.
It's when you have a video about a project, it's something sometimes different. But you have photos and then video, and we are trying now in every project to make a video.
Video.
This is a try of this.
Good. Good. So you are very specialized in Africa, actually. And I heard that, David, you have no projects in Africa, huh? How
It's
this
a
can
strange
happen?
word. Huh?
Yeah, I work in London and the US. No. I have
No.
some projects in Africa now. Yeah.
Right
It's just
now,
starting.
yeah. Oh, where?
I'm also working in Dakar and
Dakar.
Also in South Africa and Nigeria.
What kind of projects?
Very different projects. One is an office building for the World Bank and the IMF. It's the headquarters. So that's a new building.
In Dakar.
In Dakar.
This is-
Yeah. So that's on the drawing boards right now. And then in Nigeria, we completed a boutique, a small boutique commercial project, which is my first project in Africa. And then in Johannesburg, we are doing a residential hotel mixed-use project.
Okay, so you
you'll
are,
see,
okay.
I'm a bit
you're
late. I'm
starting-
following Murat.
But I know that you did some project where in US, African.
We're working, I mean, Adjaye Associates really started in London, maybe 2000 really is really when it started, and it started very much as a small studio working on projects with artists, mostly the art world. Maybe we can just put the slides on
Yeah,
and just
it's
let
not-
them roll, because I don't need to, because it would help. And in a way, it just grew organically. We were doing small studios, we were collaborating with artists, then we started working.
I wonder if we are going to start.
Can you switch us
Murat,
on?
Can you do that?
No, they have to start. I think it will come.
Arkadaşlar bize yardımcı olun. David'in slaytı da devreye girerse arkamızdan. So.
Yeah.
Is it coming?
They just rolled it. I don't know. Just roll. This is go to the beginning and roll. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So anyway, so it's really small scale projects, mostly in the UK, and then I think about 3 years, 4 years into practice, we started to work also globally. So we started to win competitions in America, in the Middle East, and then in Europe, in Germany, etc. And then we did a few projects in Asia as well.
Asia also.
Yeah, so it's just started, and so yeah, and then the biggest project, which maybe has connections to the work that we're talking about, is the project that we did in the Middle East and the project in Washington, which is the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
See, yeah, you did
Yeah,
some
yeah.
African
Well,
project.
it's not African; it's African American. They'll be very
Let's say,
upset.
yeah, African.
Be careful, Selale.
You'll get hit for that. So I have
African
to be on
American,
record very
African
clear.
American. You're right.
It's African American Museum of History and Culture, and that will open in September. Yeah.
So it's gonna open.
Yeah.
Is it? So
No,
is
no,
it-
it's just.
It
You
is-
said
it's
this is the
coming.
last opening of Obama.
Yeah, this will be. Well, I don't know if it's the last opening, but it definitely he's very, very invested in wanting to be the president that opens this building. So we're rushing to finish before he finishes his presidency this year.
That was also one of his projects. So
No, it's not really
He-
his project. No,
But
it started.
But
he
I
likes,
think
huh?
he's,
He
yeah,
likes
he's
this project.
happy.
Yeah, he supports this project.
That's good. And also you did school in Moscow.
Yeah, also working in Russia. So just before Putin, we worked for Medvedev to make a business school in Moscow.
And it is the
Right.
most expensive one, I guess. One top
It's a private school.
private school.
It's a
right?
very large school, and it's like their Harvard Business School. So it's for training the sort of management elites who usually go to France and to INSEAD or to New York, etc. And it was a way to bring professors from around the world to Russia and to teach business management in Russia, and to keep the sort of the students instead of going
Okay.
abroad to come here. So it had to be a very special kind of building that was also part of a new industry that they were making, that they wanted to make a new Silicon Valley to support entrepreneurs in this area.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you guys, you are doing many projects around the world. Every time you enter a different country and then to different cultures, and you are doing different projects. So how this is happening?
Do you want to start or shall I start that?
You start.
I think that there's a shift that's happened in architecture, which is that architecture has always had a global dimension, but I think that with globalization, a sort of turn of the sort of millennium, there's a shift where I think that you find that architects work locally, but also work globally because of the speed of technology, the way in which you can use technology, and also because of travel, the ease of travel. So in a way, we're no longer, I think, specifically just focused in one area. Some people are, and if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, that's one thing. But I think what it's meant is that the education of the architects has also had to kind of recalibrate itself. For me, the way in which I saw my education was at the end of an old system and the beginning of a new one. And I think that the new generation coming forward really operates in this world, which is that you might do a competition in Iceland or in Namibia or in Brazil. And you know, what is the operation of architecture now is very interesting, because is it a universal machine that you land in different places, or is it a device that is about a way of thinking which goes into a place which kind of synthesizes something from that place? And I think this is a very interesting debate going on in architecture between technique and response. And you know, I think that what we're trying to talk about is response, I think, without putting words in the mouth. We don't discount virtuoso skills, because the skill of the architect is part of the craft of architecture. But in a way, I think when in the 20th century, when you moved around the world, it was just so exotic to be like, for Frank Lloyd Wright to go build in Japan. So they wanted a Frank Lloyd Wright building. They're like, we want a Frank Lloyd Wright building. We only, you know, it takes 3 weeks to get there, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the world has changed. It's no longer, we don't want the world to just repeat like brands, buildings around the world. I firmly believe that we have to look at the ecology of the world and the civilizations of the world, and the more beautiful world is the one where we start to make architecture that responds to these geographies and civilizations and emerges a kind of specific architectures that makes an interesting quilt, like a blanket of different parts, rather than a kind of towards a singularity. You know, I think architecture towards this universal singularity is not very interesting in the end for me. Yeah.
That's good.
And I think what's very yesterday we walked in Istiklal Street, and then I showed him the first church we went, Saint Antoine. The same church when I was in Vienna studying was next to me. So they imported the same architecture in these years from Austria or Germany to here. So it was not a new, fresh idea. And in 60s, if you look to the Hilton building here, it's a similar building like in Athens or somewhere in the world. So all these big commercial American and English firms put the same architecture everywhere in the world. And what makes us, I think, it's more for us a bigger challenge is to make something different and to feel the country and see it from different eye.
Different eye. Also, you have a great role. I mean, you change. There is a big change in the cities. So, architect has a great role in this change. So, if you do something, you know, bad, so for example, you're going to destroy Istanbul's silhouette. So you have to be so careful. I mean, we have to be careful about what you are doing to the cities. And if you understand, if you feel the city and the culture and everything. So I was in Venice for the Biennale. So this year there was this very important topics, refugees, of course, global warming and poverty. So it was affecting all the countries' pavilion. So what do you think about this year's Biennale?
I think that the topics are, you know, I mean, the contradiction.
And are you going to do anything with this, you know, refugees?
I don't know if I don't know if
Projects.
architects are really the first port of call. They respond. A lot of architects like to respond. But I think that the issue is really to confront the reality. The reality is that actually the biggest destroyer of the planet is architecture and building. So the very act of making buildings, art and habitation, is the very act of the destruction. So, you know, in a weird way, I think we can romantically say, oh, we're going to solve it by being really nice. But actually, we're the problem. So fundamentally, there's a kind of artificial thing that we're doing to the planet, which is destroying it. We consume materials and we build things in our habitation. And we've moved from a population of less than 1 billion in 100 years to being nearly 8 billion. So we're the problem, right? So then the question is, is there a romance to it? Do we just ignore and say, it's just about, building as many houses as possible for everyone? Or, I think that the question is much more philosophical than just responding to the need. I think that when you just respond without a kind of thinking about what is the meta question, I think that sometimes you miss a lot of issues. So for me, this is the big question about, refugees and poverty and the use of materials. These are questions that come under a bigger umbrella. What kind of society do we want? What is the role of the citizen? What is the role of economics? These are big questions that then produce results that can then be made by architects. Architects just responding is like, a fly in the wind. It's really a bit,
You
I
think
think it's
so?
I think it's
Sometimes-
romantic, but I'm not. I think romance is great. I love
Right,
romantic things.
okay. But you can make you can affect the project, right? You can affect this owner of the building. He wants something from you. So, and it's not good for the environment. It's not good for the problem of the city. So you have the chance to change. You think so?
I think that there's two conversations here. There's one which is that architecture has always promoted good science, better building. That's what architecture's real job is that. Every time you make a building, you have a responsibility to try and push the stewardship, the use of materials, the ecology. So when Murat talks about
Africans.
yeah, when he says I just
Right.
make an ecological building, I don't
Yes.
need a badge, because that's our DNA. That's what we do. We try to make
Right.
it better and better and better. So when you say to an architect, try and make a building better, that's what we do. We try always to do
You
that.
try.
Yeah, because there's a difference. You see, people think that every building is made by an architect. They're not. Only maybe 5% of buildings are made by architects. A lot of buildings are just made by families, by builders, by contractors who are just buying products, making
right.
buildings, or developers just doing things that is not to do with architecture. So,
Right.
you've got to kind of separate the two things. So,
Sure.
actually you're right, there is a kind of education that has to happen. And architects are always trying to push that. We're always trying to talk about, please respond, please think about the environment, please think about the energy. We were on a competition at the Aga Khan, and there was a competition presentation about the settlement,
Yeah.
the Palestinian settlements. We talk about refugees now. Actually, refugees have been going on for so long. Look at Palestine. It's become cities where actually, the idea of the refugee has become so entropic that it's become a city. And it's like, it's no longer temporary, it's actually permanent. People have grown up only living in these places. And then the question is, when is architecture happening there? Is there somebody paint the color bright become architecture, or when they make a nice building? So it's a very sophisticated and complicated question. And it's not one where you can just say, oh, you just come in and put a nice tent or maybe make it easy. It's not that simple. It's very complicated. So
I remember
What's
we
your
looked
opinion?
in Palestine for a project, and then the jury is not architects, only architects. There are many members, and then many liked it. And then either you and me asked the questions: is it a closed city? Is it like a prison?
is it a prison? What
Yeah,
is
it
this?
was a prison.
It was a
And
prison.
then there was a discussion.
Yeah,
Then what
then it's
happened?
everything is ending. When
Yeah.
it's a prison, then
Why is it a
yeah.
project?
And then what you can do as an architect anymore, So I think before the architect, either politicians or other people. So we have this problem in Bodrum and all the coast of Turkey in the last years, and nobody knows exactly what happened and what will happen next.
Architecture is very, very. The time when architecture was kind of this primary sort of role next to an emperor is a long time ago. Architects really are part of civil society. It responds to the ecology of the city and the ideas of the city. Sometimes, right up to like even Mussolini, if you look at Rome, an emperor person can come up and just ignore the rules and then create a singularity. And there's really ugly things and really beautiful things that can come out of it. But that's a very old way that architecture works. More usually, architecture is really responding either to market forces about economics or to political ideas about what our democracies are. Do we want parliaments to be more transparent? Do we want people to be encouraged into them? Do we want to kind of democratize libraries? Do we want to create spaces where everybody can get information? That's what architects are permanently grappling with. Do we want to understand how to remake the old city, like where industrial cities were? How do we want to rehouse them, make new offices, make new workspaces? This is the work of the architect, and we're continually trying to reinvent the city. You know, for us, the city is the body, right? We're always working on it, like trying to kind of rework it.
And it was interesting in Biennale this year to see, because when you enter every second year the Arsenale, you have a different type of starting to show, you know. Rem Koolhaas, 2 years ago it was different. I remember when Sana started, so he started, of course, with her Rolex Center, with Wim Wenders' film. So it was a 3D.
Yeah.
And then this year, Aravena said, I collected all the part of gypsum board, steel members, and etc. But he's
Used
not
material,
saying used
right?
material,
Used
but he's
material,
not saying
yeah.
what will happen next,
Afterwards.
you know, after the show. Yeah. And then the end of the Arsenale was Norman Foster, not showing a tower, and then a project in Africa, and he was there with the main workers of the project. So it was very nice to see how I think the most richest architect of the world can make also simple thing and showing a mock-up in Biennale. So
It was very interesting.
is everything true in the world? I don't know.
You didn't tell us what do you think about this year's Biennale.
I just did. I've just been talking about it.
No. You said
you want
I'm
a
not gonna-
media one-liner?
How did you like it? I mean,
I just think I don't think the answer is ever simplistic. So you're not going to get a simplistic answer from me. I think it raises a lot of complicated questions. I think that and the questions are not simple. My fear is when people reduce the question really down to like or hate. It's not a Facebook page. It's really making buildings is really complicated. So I just think that you have to be careful that you don't simplify things, because I think that the notion of waste and ecology are really profound issues. But you know, if we're going to tackle them, then we have to fundamentally think: are we going to rethink the idea of the city? Because really, you can say if this history of the city is 10,000 years, the first city we discovered in our history, maybe it's 10,000 years ago in Turkey, wherever, it's here somewhere, right?
Somewhere, right.
Somewhere up here. So if we've been making cities for 10,000 years, and we've got to a point where we're really scared of what cities can do to the planet, then we really have to rethink what is the city. That's the real conversation, isn't it? That's the elephant in the room, right? Not, oh, you know, can we just help the side? I mean, that's not going to do anything. It's just making you feel good. It's like it's the ostrich putting his head in the sand. And I think that that's, you know, not interesting anymore. I think we are much more aware, and we're much more, you know, it was wonderful when Jefferson Hack was talking about Voyager flying away from the solar system and seeing our planet like a blue dot, like a spaceship. You know, what are we going to do on this spaceship? You know, how do we want to make cities? And that's a big question, because we're exponentially growing our populations. So what are we going to do? Are we going to do the same thing? Going to carry on? I think that's the big question. That's a big debate for this generation, for this millennium. Yeah. You know, how does architecture, because architecture, yes, is the leading, it leads the thing, right? So how do we have conversations? But great architecture always happens with, it's a political effort and it's a people effort. It's either people or political and society come together to make an idea or to make a manifestation of a belief. What is our belief now?
Yeah. Or
nobody
if-
wants to
if
have that.
This team is working together. This is a good sample in Washington. This is in Washington, his museum. And here you can see the freedom of an architect. But if we compare this with your, I'm not saying my Islamic Center, which opened recently in Washington, which is a copy of Sinan architecture. So then we have to think why there are not architects involved, you know. So I think this is a starting point when the politic and the architecture and everything coming together. So that's a big problem.
Yeah.
architecture is the most politic in arts, right?
I think all arts are political somehow.
But the most political one is, I think.
I think architecture, because it's in the public realm, I think when people say architecture is not political, I think they are lying to themselves.
No, of course
It is
not,
very much
yeah.
political,
Yeah.
because it reflects our values. It reflects what we believe and what we want to believe. But I think that this idea that, you know, we're at this very interesting time where people also, like also in the biennial, there's a discussion about the handmade, right? That was really a big conversation, that we should return to making things by hand and, you know, forget the machine. And, you know, again, slightly simplistic reduction for me, because really, you know, we can't ignore what industrialization has done for the last 100 years in this population explosion. We could never have coped with, you know, this housing of so many people without industrialization and manufacturing. So we may not like it, but then what are we going to do about it is the question of, you know, really continually not being satisfied with the production of architecture as an artifact, as just a built form, but continually trying to kind of re-examine how architecture is relevant to people. I actually think that when you think architecture is kind of moving to a place where it stops, you've lost the project. Architecture it's a continual, the beauty of it is that every generation has to remake architecture, I think. It's like the responsibility of every generation to remake architecture, because that's how it continually nourishes and stimulates and creates the world that we want to make. And if you're not trying to do that, I think that it's a big loss, you know? If you just start to repeat the past, I think that you sort of kind of have this very sad moment where you are no longer engaging with the reality of your time.
Yeah.
You know, you don't
There
want to.
should be a balance,
Yeah,
actually,
you
between
continually have to kind of
past
move
and
forward.
future.
Yeah,
That's true.
Maybe different thing when we are looking.
I make
we
objects
make
as well.
Objects,
Right.
very
Yeah.
nice objects.
So-
We talked yesterday again each other. For me, it's, for example, very difficult to make an object if I said if I don't know the environment, but then he said me something very interesting. Maybe you can talk
You are
about
working,
it.
yeah.
For me, you know, I think that there is this myth that somehow the object lives on its own. And I always said that I couldn't make, when I was asked to make my first chair for Noel, I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't know what the hell, how'd you do that? And it had to kind of, I realized that I had to suddenly create the context in my mind. I had to kind of make the narrative before I could make the object, in the way that I make architecture, in the way that we talk about architecture. And once you do, you realize that that's the difference between an architect making an object and a designer just conceptualizing a form. Because in a way, a kind of designer can just think through the techniques of manufacturing, the material properties, and just kind of come up with a proposition. Whereas architects really find that very hard. We need to find the solution. So I was saying, you know, okay, what is the narrative about this place? Am I trying to talk about the qualities of light, for instance? Am I trying to talk about a certain kind of democratization of material and object, for instance? And then suddenly from that, I could start to think about things. Or am I trying to make a relationship to the nature of a building, like Macintosh, let's say? Then it suddenly changed. Then it's like, oh, okay, the project, the idea of making furniture is no longer just about universals again. It's about specific conditions. And then if an object becomes something that has a kind of, what I call a transnational quality, in the end, it moves from its particularity to a kind of global situation, then that's the beauty of a fantastic accident, but not the presumption of the beginning of the act. Do you see what I mean?
Murat, so you don't think so? I mean, you can't do any objects
No, we
in the future,
designed,
maybe?
when we designed the Bodrum airport, so I hated all these chairs, and they are very expensive. And then we designed with Turkish company Norus
Norus.
chair,
I
and then
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
after
beautiful.
us they sold
So
the
many.
same to I think in St. Petersburg. I don't
There you
remember.
go.
The colors I don't like it, but but they use without asking us. But then I saw the chair there; it was nice. So, but that was purposely made. So
Yeah.
this is a different situation.
Yeah, but I think that this is really interesting conversation of transnationalism, when something starts
Right.
in a kind of specific cultural frame, but then becomes a universal or more universal object. Yeah. Your team are like telling you to say something.
Say something,
Say
please.
about the ceiling.
Yeah, we should. Ceiling is.
Do you remember? Okay.
You should tell.
Sometimes we had also all these engineered ceilings, so we said we will make something different also. Same airport, we designed our ceiling. This is also now one of the standard product after we made this.
After
So,
we
Exactly.
made it.
Perfect. I think that's the difference between an architect and a designer.
yeah,
So it changed.
yeah.
Maybe we should get some questions
Sure.
from the audience, so
Sure.
it should be more dialogue. What do you think?
You like
Sure.
this, I think.
Do you have any questions? Huh. You should be the one
You. You
asking
are
the
in the
first
middle.
question. David, you should do some projects in Turkey also.
Can I go ahead?
Please, I'm waiting.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for this. I would like to ask one question about the Biennale, Architecture Biennale. This
Huh.
year, this team was reporting from the front, and it was focused on man, human, all those crises, global warming, climate change, migrant crisis, and all different pavilions were answering to the team with different projects and buildings and systems. Do you think that now is architecture much more human focused? Is it like also changing by this way? This is my first question. And second question is that I really believe that buildings that we live in, they affect us. We feel, for example, we are here in this wonderful, beautiful building, and it makes us feeling something, and we are part of it. And I'm sure that architecture has a goal, like it's maybe one of the goals. But I'm wondering, of course it's not I like it or hate it, but as a normal human being, do I have the right to comment about architecture, about the buildings, like, as we are a part of it? Thank you.
You absolutely have a right.
If not, there is a problem.
Then
I
there's a
think.
big problem. Then it's not. Then it's not architecture.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this idea that you hit it. Buildings affect us completely. So fundamentally, you know, that's the whole project of architecture, is to continually fundamentally affect us. But you know, the effect is not just to stimulate you. It's hopefully to stimulate you to become a new kind of citizen. So there is a kind of point to the disorientating effect of architecture. It's very specific, because what we're doing, you know, there was a kind of very beautiful quote, is that architects are the greatest liars, right? Because you sort of believe that this is real, but it's not, right? It's just completely an artifice. We've made a construction with a geometry that makes you believe that somehow you are now in a collective cube. It's a lie, right? The world is not like this. You could evaporate it, and it's actually nature, and it's really tough out there. So, in a way, what we are doing is continually constructing artifices for you to kind of learn how to be a collective, right? That's our job. So we're continually remaking the collective. That's why we say, okay, what is the library? Maybe a library from Alexandria is really beautiful, but not relevant for the 20th century, because now there's so much more of us, and we want to work a different way. We have smartphones, so we're working this way. You know, we teach in a different way. So we have to make a new artifice that allows us to understand how to work in this environment. That's why architecture is continually relevant. It's always chasing the shift of society to try and make frames. If we stop, then the thing moves, you know, and I think when you see architecture not being relevant to people, they suddenly start to hate it. They say, oh, this architecture, I don't like it doesn't respond to me. Or if the only architecture they see is not really architecture, but just building, just like massive housing that just seems scaleless and uncontextual, and they don't see responses, they start to think that architecture is not relevant. But actually, the whole point is that, you know, that is just about production. And architecture is about the construction of the things that support the life that you want to live. And if you really want to make an ideal society, you have to produce more architecture, actually, to support the density of the people that are being kind of coming into our societies who want to be inspired by the society. And this is the dilemma, right? This is the big dilemma. We actually need to produce more architecture, not more construction.
That's right, yeah. That's very, very important. You're so right. What do you think, Murat?
I remember when I was in Amsterdam, in all these new islands with the new housing. I asked the question, why you need new houses and new apartments, and then the question was, for example, in Turkey we need, because the population is growing up, but in Europe it's going down.
Yeah.
And that's why they need the refugees and us, I think.
Germany.
Yeah, but they said what's happening in Dutch families, I think also in Europe, they are splitting, and then they are almost single movers for the apartments, and they have different needs. And then I saw a Turkish worker in a factory is next to a Dutch family, so they can live together. I think in Istanbul it's still, or in Turkey it's still a big problem. And then I saw people, they like their cars. They have an apartment where they can move with a lift their cars, and the car is next to them, for example. The people, they like gardens, they can make gardens. But all these projects happened not only with architects. They are in different groups coming together and saying what they want. And I think in Turkey it will be also, we started projects like this also. Because of the earthquake, so we have to renew all our buildings. So that's a chance.
Started already.
Yeah. And we had this big problem with Toki housing projects from the government. Now I think it will change. Now they start to work with us. So I think so. Future can be different.
Different.
Yeah.
Much better.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a kind of conversation about, the ugly skyline and, big buildings, but actually they don't have to be. I actually think they don't have to be. I know there's it's a controversial one because everybody loves the picturesque city, but actually I think that you can add to the city without just making very boring, towers, which is really more about money or efficiency rather than density. People always say that, those towers are about density. I'm always like, there's very few projects that are really about density that you see. Most of them are about economies, like rich or poor economies, like fast numbers or making a lot of money. So, but actually when you see really amazing density projects, we actually love them because, it's actually like, I think when you live in a kind of an incredible collective, which is supportive between nature and your neighbor, it makes a really beautiful environment. We actually love those environments whenever we see them in history. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to plan very well, I guess. If you are in a city like Istanbul, we have to be so careful about the city's historical past.
Sure.
And
but also be brave about the future, not be really. You have to invent it again. I mean, the beauty of Istanbul for me that whenever I come, I'm always like, I'm amazed at the appropriation and the use of space. In a city where actually there isn't that much public space. If you think about other European cities, there's a kind of an incredible appropriation of space, which is in line with the private sector, which creates a totally unique phenomenon. And it happens maybe in one dimension, but I think you can learn so much from it about how to make density. In fact, Istanbul is like when you're in it, you probably hate it. But for somebody coming in, you see that there are incredibly sophisticated lessons that are being which are just normal life for you, and that they're really actually very powerful.
you are one of the architects.
I love Istanbul.
Okay.
Hello. So as a young architect, my question to you is going to be about the shifting role of the architect, because I just finished a book and I'm obsessed by it, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, and the protagonist, for those who haven't read it, is about an architect who is fixated on the integrity and soul autonomy of the architect as a designer and in control of everything, not compromising with the clients. But I guess that in this age, and you talked about globalization, I don't think that architects have the luxury, or I don't know if it's a curse, of being autonomous anymore. I mean, we have so much responsibility to all different sectors, and now I guess the communities also have a say in things that are being erected. So I just wanted to ask you about what you think about the changing role of the architect and where it's going or where it is at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think that actually there's a really dynamic shift happening in architecture, which is really seismic, and I think it's because of the digitization of our craft. We're no longer sort of in a world that we used to be, and I think that actually the architect of the future is going to look very different to what we are now in a way that we're just seeing the ends of an old system and the beginnings of a new one. And I think that this idea of the architect as an artist sitting alone was always a fantasy. It was never true. I think that don't believe that. It's a great narrative, but you know, I mean, the most beautiful objects in the world were made through a discourse with somebody else. You know, it's never been the architect just simply sitting on his own, you know, dreaming of an artifice. It's a kind of myth. There is a kind of culture that, you know, there's some people that believe that the art of architecture is like autonomous thing that you can just build and that's its own thing. But I think that I don't buy it, because I think that even with that autonomy, there is a kind of purpose, that architecture ultimately needs purpose, and purpose requires a negotiation, right, to understand what purpose is. So in a way, this is always the kind of catch that's happening. But I think that you have to enjoy that, you know, I always love Frank Gehry saying, actually, the whole purpose of, you know, architecture is to kind of debunk the rules so that new rules can be made, which I thought was like weird when I first heard him say that. But what he meant by that was that, you know, continually the compromise and the negotiations create incredible opportunities for you to find new positions, and that the projection of a picturesque architecture is not that interesting. It's about what is the problem and how do you find new narratives to recreate architecture. And I think that the best architects invent that. It's not a kind of picturesque projection. And I think once you kind of free yourself from your addiction to the picturesque, I think architecture becomes really interesting because it's continually solving problems.
That's why maybe I'm always thinking every building we are designing again is a prototype.
Yeah,
So
Right.
yeah.
it's not like a car you can repeat
Just
or
roll out.
refrigerate. Yeah.
Yeah.
If that, it will be very boring, and it has
Yeah.
nothing to do also with the human being.
Yeah.
I think we need. I think there are many artists here, but I think the main problem or main I think differentiation, because an artist can make if he wants what he wants at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
And then we tried this in the last year to work with artists to make exhibitions, and it was very difficult with them also to make a teamwork. If you say to somebody or give a brief, I need a photo from Bosphorus, so
No, it's not going to happen from an artist.
yeah. So then you have to find a balance. But with architects, it's differently, I think. I think
Okay.
that makes, so we have no time. Okay.
Yeah, we have no time. It's already 5:45. We have to close this session. Thank you so much, David. And Murat, thank you so much for this great conversation, discussion. Thank you for joining us.